Hello. Okay. We've got half of what I promised from last week. I say half of what I've got everything that I promised and I did not achieve going into my office. Welcome to my annual works in progress video. If you've never been here before or you've not been here for very long, you probably don't know what this is. So my annual works in progress video is a thing that I started back in 2022 when I realised in 2022 that I was not bringing a book out in 2022. So back in 2021, in October 2021, I brought out my first ever book, right? Mary Ellen Breaking the Curse, the start of the Guardian Death series. And I wanted to bring out the sequel in 2022 and I couldn't because it wasn't finished. And I was like, I don't want people to be languishing and wondering if I'm going to be bringing out this book ever. So I decided to make a video about how I was working on that and I was working on a couple of other things at the same time. And then in 2023, despite the fact that I was bringing out 3 books, I was very excited for the thing that I was bringing out in 2024. So I was like, why don't I just keep doing this? And thus here we are. Did it in 2024, now it's 2025, we're doing it again. So the format of this video, the layout should be, if I can keep my thoughts straight for long enough, because please forgive me, but it's the worst day of the quarter. There's so much going on. It's a whole thing. My wife runs these events that happen every quarter at the minute with the job that she has. I'm not going to give too much detail about it, but basically today is the day that happens, which means that she has to be up at 6. And if I don't get up with her, all 3 of the pets will have an absolute tantrum all day. So I've been up since 6 and normally I don't get up till like 7:30, which I know is only like an hour and a half, but it really does make a difference. So I apologise if this is a bit scrambly. This is the only time I have to film this because my wife is out doing this event and I'm here alone, but for pets. So I also apologise if you hear any pet noises. Currently, I am looking primarily at the camera, but also behind the camera, sitting in a chair, is Porthos, which is just the best thing ever. It's like having a director who's fallen asleep. Then there are 2 cats as well. They might make noise. They might run around. You've probably seen this kind of stuff before if you've been here before. And the reason that I'm not in my office, in case any of you are wondering, because I will get this intro to the video over with as soon as I possibly can. But if any of you are wondering why I'm still not in my office, it's because it's also flea and worming day, because of course those things are at the same time. Which means that all 3 of the pets have to be separated for long enough for them to eat their flea and worming tabs with their meals. Porthos did a great job, partly because we put it in a spoonful of yogurt and he will down anything in a spoonful of yogurt. And the cats are doing a bad job, so they have to be kept separate. Anyway, the format and layout of this video should be that I'm going to talk about the books I already have out, so if you know about those, I'm sorry, but hey ho. Then I'm going to talk about my upcoming books. Then we're going to transition probably quite awkwardly into my works in progress. Part of the reason it's going to be an awkward transition is because I have a book that is both upcoming and a work in progress, which is difficult, but I will hopefully remember to explain what I mean by that. So, here we go. Timeline-wise. I started books that have come out already. I started publishing books in October 2021. On the 26th of October 2021, I brought out Mary Ellen Breaking the Curse, which is the start of the Guardian Cadet series, which is an adult fantasy, I was about to say sci-fi, that's not right, an adult fantasy sword and sorcery type series set at a magic university with like a heartwarming romance. I think it's a very sweet romance. I really like it. My wife calls it the cinnamon roll boyfriend book. Because the boyfriend is a cinnamon roll. And that's pretty much the description of that book. Then of course I didn't bring anything out in 2022, like I said. And then in March 2023, I want to say the 17th, but it might have been the 14th. 4s and 7s are hard for me. I have dyslexia. Numbers are confusing. Not in a, that sounds ridiculous. If you don't know anything about dyslexia, that doesn't make any sense. It's the way that my brain perceives the written word. So a 7 shaped is quite similar shaped to a 4 because they both have that like angular aspect. And anything that can be mirrored upside down starts to look very similar. So like 6s and 9s is a really prime example one, but 4s and 7s also, and 2s and 5s, all numbers. Anyway, the point is that in March, it doesn't really matter what day, does it? In March 2023, I brought out the sequel to Mary Ellen Breaking the Curse, Mary Ellen Finding the Air. It is what it says on the tin. It's the same series. I've already described it. In June 2023, I also brought out Welcome to Humanity, which is like a sci-fi dystopian short novel. This is, again, where it's really great to have done this in my office. It would have been really great to have done this in my office because I have the wall of books behind me so you can see all of the books. Alas, we're not there. So Welcome to Humanity is a sci-fi dystopian short novel dedicated to my wife for our 5/10 year anniversary. And if you want to understand that, just go and find the video where I talk about what that is and what that means. I think it's something about the fact that it's the first book I've dedicated to someone other than the reader. That's the kind of title. It's around 2023, July, June-ish. That's what you're looking for. The Welcome to Humanity playlist. I think I have one of those. I'm not actually sure. Anyway, the point is that it is 3 interweaving timelines, and it is, the premise basically is that Ravi has been reanimated. He's been brought back to life and turned partially cybernetic, and he doesn't know why. And before he can really find out, he is invited to join the Resistance, primarily by happenstance. The Resistance is the people who believe that the cyborgs who were awakened and turned into what I'm going to tentatively describe as real people during the crash, as it's called, deserve the same rights that a human gets, or at least deserve to have some level of human rights, even if they're they deserve the same level of rights as the humans in the story. That's the premise of the story. It's an allegorical narrative. It is not actually about like the state of, large language models or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that. It's literally people deserve to be treated as human people. And I think it's particularly relevant as we continue on this current path that we're on in most places. Although I suppose not most places. Some places are turning it around. Anyway, the point. That was a book that I brought out. It's a good one. The other 2 main characters, because like I said, it's 3 interweaving timelines. You have Dr. Palmer, who is an engineer who's been working on the cyborg and cybernetic and reanimation project, and realizes that they're doing some unethical shit, and a cyborg themselves who gets awakened during the crash and tries to carve out and figure out what it means to be a person, because they've never had that experience before, but they're also not a child. So how do you figure out how to be a person when you never had the experience of being a child or being nurtured and that kind of thing? It's very interesting, I think. And so does everyone else who's given me feedback. The next book I want to talk about, or have brought out rather, it was Unlicensed Delivery, which is the start of its series, the Interplanetary Alliance novels. That'll be relevant later. The Interplanetary Alliance novels are like sci-fi space romp, jump on a ship and have some questy times in space kind of vibe. It's very much a love letter to like 1960s Star Trek / Lower Decks Star Trek / other fun sci-fi things. Look at my N7 hoodie and ask me what I like. There's also, you can't see it, but there's Starfinder on this shelf of cookbooks and also tabletop role-playing game books. It's like Red Dwarf as well, that kind of thing. All of those like funny but kind of woke sci-fi things. It's very much like that. The original plan was that you would get onto a different ship every single IPA book, but fair few people asked me, would you please write another book with these same characters from Unlicensed Delivery. So in my upcoming books, I will be talking about that. But in the meantime, Unlicensed Delivery is the first book in the series. It is a sci-fi space vampire, I already said that. It follows a small crew on a ratty little cargo ship trying to get their deep space travel license so they can cart cargo intergalactically rather than in one galaxy or one cluster. And basically, they're all adults, they're all like top of their field kind of thing, but they still have to go through this like really kind of not basic. It's like when I started writing it, the thing I was thinking about was a CSCS card, which is a construction safety something that my wife had to get when she was working in commercial archaeology, because that is technically a construction site. And also sometimes literally a construction site. And that was what I was thinking about, was that like, it's not an unreasonable request. And also it's kind of annoying when you're in the process of doing it, because a lot of the stuff is just quite logical if you spent any amount of time around construction. Or training in these kinds of things. But so it's one of those. But it has also been compared to like an HGV license. So I want to make it really clear right there though that all of those characters are adults. Like I said, they're top of their field, they know what they're doing, they've been doing this for a long time. It's not like sometimes when I say it's like driver's license and people are like, oh, so they're like young. No, they're fully grown adults. The main character is in his 40s, like the main character. They're all 5 of them are the main character, but the blurbed character for the first book for Unlicensed Delivery is in his 40s. So, context. I mean, all the rest of them are aliens, so it's hard to pin an age on them. The next book I brought out was in 2024, and it was my Not the Kind of Dandy Pirate duology, which is a pirate fantasy series, or rather duology, following a high society liege, Nat, who gets captured by pirates for ransom. A ransom that they know that their father is never going to pay, even if he were to get the letter. And also they are aware that the pirates would not take well to finding out who their father is. I'm not going to say any more, but there are 2 of those. I brought them both out in 2024. It starts with Not the Fighting Kind and then Not the Fainting Kind, but technically you can read them in either order, because you can read Not the Fainting Kind and then read Not the Fighting Kind as a prequel. You can do that. I have checked. People have done it. It does work. When it comes to upcoming novels, I will admit Not That Kind of Dandy Omnibus was supposed to come out this year, but it turns out that publishing an omnibus hardcover edition of a book is harder than I anticipated and also more expensive. So that is on pause. It is in the front of all of the books, like Not That Kind of Dandy. Both of the Not That Kind of Dandy books have the omnibus in the front of it. That is not out yet. It is upcoming, and hopefully it will be out next year or the year after. It's either coming 26 or 27. And if it's not out by 2027, then I will have to admit that it's just never going to happen. And I refuse to admit that yet, because I think it will happen next year or the year after. Other upcoming books I have, more relevantly, more upcomingly, sooner, nearer, so close I can taste it, but I cannot hold it in my hands yet, is Unlicensed Travel, which is the book that people have asked me for, the sequel to Unlicensed Delivery, the direct sequel to Unlicensed Delivery, wherein you get the same characters in an immediate sequel. So it's the events of the first book happen, and then the events of the second book happen. Unlicensed Travel is coming out on the 4th of November. Definitely guaranteed. It's coming out on the 4th of November. Don't have a pre-order link yet as of filming this video. If that changes, it will be in the description box. When that changes, hopefully I'll remember to put it in the description box, even if it's not before this video comes out. If not, please go to my website and check, because that is the place to get all of the most up-to-date information about where you can buy these books, right? That's all in the description box, right next to the like and subscribe buttons, if you feel like sticking around. When it comes to upcoming books, we are shifting from upcoming to... I can't tell you anything about Unlicensed Travel because it's a spoiler for Unlicensed Delivery. it's the sequel to Unlicensed Delivery. It's a sci-fi space rom. It's all of those things. When it comes to, we are shifting from upcoming books into works in progress now, because I'm about to talk about my vampire books, right? My vampire books, I keep tentatively saying they're come out, the first one's coming out in 2026. And I'll be honest, I've fully tied myself into that because it is an urban fantasy series where, like, it's like, my pitch for it so far is like Buffy but queerer. And it's coming in 2026 to the extent that because it's an urban fantasy, so it's set in the real world, though it is a fictionalized town, I have set it in 2026 when it comes out. There are days of the week in this book, so it kind of has to come out then. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be really disappointed and I may have to make some giant edits. So I'm hoping that that's not going to happen. So, you never know. Like, it's an urban fantasy series, like Buffy but queerer. Hang on, I'll explain this in a minute. When I get properly into thingy. I have to find it now. There it is. Claretbury Chronicles. So the first book does have a title, but I'm holding on to and reserving that title for when I start announcing it coming out. So I'm currently just calling it by the series title, which is Claretbury Chronicles. Claretbury is the fictionalized town that I have created for this series of books. So the premise is, on those rare clear days, Claretbury is, well, dead. With the premise is that that's sort of more the hook. The premise is that Billy is a supernaturally gifted monster hunter and killer. They have appeared in a lot of short stories on nopuddles.wordpress.com, especially during Wump events, because Billy is an eminently wumpable character, because they have spent their entire life working in monster hunting. It's very easy to wump a character like that. But basically, Billy got picked up as a teenager by the Hunters Guild. I don't know why I put that in bunny ears. By the Hunters Guild, who train up people with their supernatural abilities into becoming monster hunters. They are then sent to this town of Claretbury that is run by a vampire mob, right? And that's been going fine, more or less, for quite a long time. But something's changed in 2026. And things aren't going quite so neatly anymore. Something's gone wrong, so Billy goes to fix the problem. That's what I have for premise right now. I mean, I have more detail in this, which I will now explain as I go into my works in progress portion of the works in progress video, 20 minutes in. This is my collection point. This notebook has one exclusive purpose, and that is to collect all of my ideas into. Now, this is a dangerous place. I have done a deep dive video on it earlier this year, so it's one where I'm like holding this up to my face in the thumbnail, so it's like this baby can fit so many ideas in it or something like that. How a chaos gremlin organizes their ideas. I don't know, something like that. The whole point of this quick version is that I collect my ideas in it. If I have an idea for a story, it goes in here. If I have an idea for a story and I don't have this with me, because this lives generally in my office, but right now it's in my living room with us. Generally this lives in my office, in my desk, so it's always in the same place, so I know exactly where it is. If I have an idea when I am not at my desk or in easy access of my desk, I text it to myself and then I write it up in here. Every single one of them gets some kind of title. Sometimes that title is what will eventually become the real title. Sometimes that title is Billy the Demon Killer, because that was the original title that I had for working on Claretbury Chronicles. I don't know if that is still in here. So I had to change this a few years ago because such is life, these things happen. The cat peed on it while we were moving house. So not this one, the previous one. So I had to get a replacement, and then I had to copy up all of those cat pee stained pages into this thing. It was awful. It smelled really bad. But yeah, basically this is where I keep all of my ideas, and therefore it's very helpful during this works in progress video because I can read the pictures to you. So when it comes to when it comes to works in progress, The difficulty for me is that when I tell people about this, a lot of the time people are like, that's a lot of books. And I have talked about how I try to keep it to 4 or less. I don't do that anymore, apparently. And I'd love to say it's 4 series or less, but no. I've just been writing a lot of different things lately. So obviously I'm still working on Claretbury Chronicles. There are provisionally, don't hold me to any of this, 4 books in that series and 2 companion novels. So companion novel is, they're not, the 4 books in the series is Billy, 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 right? The 2 companion novels are other people who happen to live in Claretbury. Or near Claretbury, or show up during the Claretbury Chronicles novels. So I am currently working on these 4 Billy books. And by these 4, I mean I've done 3 of them and I'm working on the 4th one. I've talked so many times about how I'm going to explain how I'm doing Claretbury different, how I'm writing Claretbury differently. That's pretty much how. But I will do a deep dive video on it at some point when I'm closer to bringing this stuff out, and I'm going to be hyping it up a bit more. I'm also working on the 2 books that are Claretbury companions, because I have no self-control. The Claretbury companions are twofold. One is a book that I had previously been calling Fae Court's Winter King, but there is a lot of crossover between that and Claretbury, so it's now Claretbury Companion. Fae Court's Winter King is also completely separate. If you just wanted to read that, that would be fine. Fae Court's Winter King I have in here somewhere as well. Oh, I've just found Silly's Own Cat though, so maybe I should talk about that first. No, we'll just hold on to that page while I look for Fae Court's Winter King. There we go. So the premise of Fae Court's Winter King is that the Winter King, so there's 2, we may actually end up completely changing it. That's not the official title, that's just what I've been working title. I have an official title, but we may be changing the terminology we use for this stuff. But basically, the premise of Fae Court's Winter King is that the Winter King dies, which is not a thing that's supposed to happen, and Alpion is to be the new Winter King, which is kind of a disaster because A, he doesn't want to, and B, it kind of scuppers his plans. Then we also have Thera, who is contractually obliged to become the new Winter King's wife, the new Winter Queen, because of a yonks old Fae contract that her great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents signed, basically, so far back in their history that none of the family remembered this was a thing, because the Winter King never died, so it never activated the new Winter King, new Winter Queen clause of the contract. It's a fun thing. We get to dive into the depths of that in the book. And then there is also, because it's a polyamory book, there's also Erden. Erden is an ambassador from the Summer Court / sort of exiled / kind of ran away. It's a complicated thing. Again, these characters have all popped up in Wump events over on nogriddles.wordpress.com. But basically, Alpion and Erden have been having a secret affair. And by affair, I don't mean anyone's cheating. I mean that because they're from opposite courts, it's very frowned upon for them to be together. And then obviously Alpion becomes the Winter King, and then he is contractually and magically bound to a human wife. And it's what are we gonna do now? That's the basic premise of the novel. And then we have the other Claretbury companion, which is currently on nogriddles.wordpress.com, just called Claretbury Companion. But I have the working title. It does have an official title also, that I'm not announcing. But I have a working title of Silly's Own Cat. Now, you may have heard me talk about Silly's Own Cat if you've been here before. Some of these works in progress are going to be familiar to you. Silly's Own Cat is basically an idea that my wife and I came up with as a joke when we first got our first cat, Ayla. Because cats get zoomies, especially kittens get zoomies sometimes. And one of us made the joke about, can you imagine if you got cursed into a cat body, and then whenever the cat has zoomies, it's actually the cat brain taking over, and the rest of the time you're like this really dignified witch. That's the premise of Silly's Own Cat, is Evelyn is a witch and has been cursed into a cat body for reasons, and got rescued by a human called Raz. And basically the goal of the story is to get Evelyn her human body back. So those are all the Claretbury books I'm working on. I am also working on several Interplanetary Alliance novels, because I have this idea. Right, when it comes to the IPA, the Interplanetary Alliance novels, I have lots and lots of ideas. They are very difficult to write, unfortunately. So Unlicensed Delivery is the easiest book I ever wrote. Every single other IPA novel has been painstaking. I don't know why, but they have been really hard. I love doing it. It's well worth it. But I have ideas, and I'm just going to go through a couple of the ones that, like, especially the ones that have already had short stories on everpoodles.wordpress.com. So, like, we have, I was fully about to just be like, we have title. No. We have the one with Benoit, Essex, and I don't think you've met Saya on everpoodles.wordpress.com, but Benoit, Essex, and Saya are the main three characters. There is also some other characters I haven't fully landed on who they are yet, which is a big part of the problem. Most of the IPA books have about 5 main characters, and if that part of the problem is figuring out who those 5 characters are going to be. But basically, with Benoit and Essex's one, it's that their ship needs to have its shields replaced, and that's the premise of the story. Like, I know that sounds very literal, but bear in mind that Unlicensed Delivery's premise is get your deep space travel license. Like, that's what I was working with to begin with, and then we ended up with this really lovely book. It's the same concept. Like, these ideas are quite little, and then they grow into these really beautiful stories. So we have that one. We have Hubble, who has been wumped. Hubble is a pro mech res performer. So basically they do professional mechanical wrestling, which is like you put on half a suit of armor that's made out of mech and then fight people. Yes, it is like that anime that you're thinking of. And yes, it is also like what Min does in Chilling Effect, except I think Min does it in the second book of Chilling Effect. But anyway, the point is that yes, it's a lot like that. It's a really standard sci-fi staple. And Hubble lives on a family ship, so it's their family ship, and has one crew member who is not a family member, who is the Doctor. They then get another crew member from that same culture, and it becomes a real problem. Then we have one that I haven't talked about yet. I'm still really working on it, but basically it's the idea that I had was that there is a pair of siblings. They're more or less twins, but one of them is an organic child and one of them is a mechanical child, which is cool. Then we have Choice, who you have also met in Wumptober, or Wumpril, one of them. Choice is an external trader for the IPA, so they can trade within and outside of IPA spaces. Some of Choice's crew are not IPA species, and they keep getting flagged as a pirate at a border crossing. This one is largely inspired by the fact that my father-in-law used to be a border crossing guy when he was employed before he retired. So I picked his brain about a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, this character is inspired by his experiences. It's also very much like, I would like to point out that the IPA border guy is being an asshole. That's not based on my father-in-law at all. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, it's inspired by his story. It's not based on him. And then there's a couple of other ideas that I have that aren't really fleshed out enough to even give you the pitch. I am working on all of these all at once because, like I said before, I am a chaos gremlin and I can't just pick one of them, unfortunately. Then we also have 2 more. We also have, what I'm working on is a book called The Icarus, which started as a short story over on thepoodles.wordpress.com in 2023 or 2024. The basic premise is that I am manipulating a lot of Greek mythos for my own amusement and setting it in space. It's inspired by Greek mythology, but set in space. Zan is one of the main characters. There's 2 main characters in this one. There's Zan and there's Apollo. Zan is an ergotes, their serving staff / slave. It's kind of complicated. It's kind of complicated because, again, it's based in actual Greek history. Like, this is an actual position. It's an actual term. And they are working in a palace for a royal family who have this magical power of lightning, right? And only the royal family is supposed to have this magical power of lightning. That proves untrue with Zan, who accidentally kills someone. Luckily for Zan, that's when the pirate ship rocks up and kind of accidentally abducts them. And then from there, we get the fallout of all of that. Finding out that you have magical powers when you really, really, really shouldn't. Joining this pirate ship, being on this pirate ship full of these really supposedly deadly, horrifying people. Hang on, I've got... Everybody knows about the Icarus, the fearsome ship that traverses the galaxy, preying on weak souls. They're ruthless, reckless, relentless. What they don't know is the captain drinks himself to sleep every night. They don't know that the reason the Icarus is so reckless is everyone aboard has already lost everything. Right? You can read the short story. None of this is spoilers because it's all in the short story. This is very likely to come out in 2028. Why? Because this is very likely to be my 10/15 year anniversary gift to my wife. Finally, we have the only other thing I think that I am working on right now, unless you count Monster House, which I did write in March, but then I stopped writing it because I realised I was doing too many things and I had other stuff that was more important, so that's gone back on the back burner, especially because I don't really know what I'm doing with Monster House yet. If you would like to learn more about Monster House, I have a video about it in March. The final thing that I'm working on, I don't want to give too much away yet because I'm really excited about it, which sounds absurd, but I've been working on it since about this time last year. I had the idea for it about this time last year, and I've been working on it ever since then. And basically, it is a soft sci-fi or possibly fantasy, or sci-fantasy maybe, romance heavy story. Like, it could possibly steer more into romance than anything else, which has never happened to me before. But I'm just not sure yet. But the basic premise is smushing together two very different worlds. So like, it's the lowest class of... The basic premise of it is, what if the highest possible power in the entire worldscape accidentally ended up in a forced relationship situation with the lowest possible class? What happens if you smash those two things together? That's the premise. And that, I think, is... Well, it's not everything. Like, this book is absolutely chock full. I have 66 pages of ideas. Yeah, 66 pages of ideas in here. Albeit most of the things are on a 2-page spread, so... But I have 66 pages of ideas in here. So even if that's only 30 ideas, it's still 30 ideas. And if, I suppose you do have to take away that there are some ideas that I've already worked on. But then also the fact is that the IPA books all just have one double-page spread. So I'm not worried about running out of any ideas soon. And if you're wondering, because normally I explain this, what differentiates a work in progress from just an idea, it's basically how much of it is written. So if I've written more than one scene of a project, I count it as a work in progress. If it's less than a scene, I mean, obviously, actually I did write more than one scene of Monster House, but that was a very sort of intense, focused period of work on it, and then I put it down and I haven't picked it back up again. So I suppose more accurately, it's something I've gone back to multiple times, separately from that first initial, like, oh, I have an idea, I want to write down some stuff. I hope you found this interesting. I probably normally explain other things, but to be honest, if you want more info about how I run things and do things, you should probably watch a works in progress video that I didn't film when I had to get up an hour and a half earlier than normal. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it entertaining. Let me know what stories you're most excited about that I've talked about here, if any. I mean, if any of you say unlicensed travel, I will be jazzed, by the way. I'll be so excited if you guys are excited about unlicensed travel. And in the meantime, I will see you in 2 weeks' time. I have got a plan, but I also had a plan to be back in my office today. So we'll see if that works out, shall we? It's the thing as well, I think, of like moving back into my office is going to take some time and effort and energy, because these things always do. And it becomes the question of what needs my attention and energy most right now. And that's how I kind of organize everything. I try to big picture a lot of stuff, because otherwise I'll just do whatever I want whenever I want, which is a great way to get stuff done, but it's not a great way to finish things. And if you're wondering how can I work on all of these different things at once, I will actually just really quickly cover that. Basically, I pick a primary project. The primary project is the thing that I go back to by default. It's the thing that I go to whenever I'm like, I want to write something, or I have time to write something. I'll open that first unless I have a specific idea for something else. Currently, my primary project is the Claretbury Chronicles books. Subsequent to that, it'll probably be, I don't know, it'll probably be something else. It'll have to be something else because they'll be finished by then. If you're wondering about the release schedule for Claretbury Chronicles, I will talk about that closer to the time. I hope you'll come with me on my Wumptober journey this October, unless Wump isn't your thing, in which case I suppose don't. And I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye!